All right, we are crossing what I like to call the African Botanical Bridge today. We're connecting 1,000-year-old indigenous African healing practices directly to the absolute cutting edge of modern molecular biohacking. If you've been wondering where the next major frontier of human optimization is actually coming from, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Seriously, think about this for a second. How did ancient African survival tools, plants literally used to stave off starvation, heat exhaustion, and total fatigue in some of the harshest environments on the planet, how did they become the absolute most sought-after molecules in modern biohacking? That's the core mystery we're decoding today. We're going to dig deep into the hard science behind 7 specific traditional plants to see exactly what they're doing under the hood of human physiology.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with those ancient roots. Then we're going system by system. Cognitive enhancement and mood, endocrine optimization and drive, metabolic resilience and recovery, and finally, we absolutely have to talk about the real science and the safety protocols.
Let's kick things off with part 1, ancient roots, modern biohacking, and this incredible 1,000-year legacy. We're looking at a pretty massive historical arc here. Way back in the Stone Age, the San and Khoi peoples of southern Africa, along with traditional healers in West Africa, essentially used the raw environment as their pharmacy. They used specific geophytes and succulents to literally survive days without water or food. Fast forward to 1662, and Jan van Riebeck jots down the first written account of this. And today, right now, those exact same plants are sitting under microscopes in top-tier clinical labs undergoing rigorous pharmacological profiling. I really want this number to sink in for a second. 1,000. We are looking at over 1,000 years of structured human physiological optimization. I mean, way before we were tracking our sleep scores on our wrists or meticulously weighing out our morning supplements, traditional healers were already effectively mapping our biological pathways using just the flora around them. It's wild. All right, moving into our first physiological category, cognitive enhancement and mood, specifically targeting serotonin and PDE4. Now, what's really fascinating about targeting the PDE4 enzyme is the precise biological mechanism at play here. PDE4 inhibition literally blocks the phosphodiesterase 4 enzyme. And why do we even care about that? Because by blocking that specific enzyme, we help regulate neuroinflammation, which actively improves complex cognitive functions. We're talking less brain fog, enhanced mental flexibility, and vastly better executive function. You know, your brain's ability to actually plan, focus, and multitask without burning out. And that brings us right to Sceletium tortuosum, which you probably know as Kanna. Traditionally, Khoisan pastoralists chewed this succulent to suppress hunger, thirst, and physical pain during these really grueling hunts in the arid Cape provinces. Today, and I'm not taking a stance on its massive commercial boom here, just looking at the facts, we know exactly how it worked for them. It acts as a potent PDE4 inhibitor and it upregulates VMAT2. Basically, it floods the brain with mood-elevating monoamines and gives you that crucial cognitive flexibility we just talked about. Then we have Griffonia simplicifolia, which takes a totally different route to cognitive biohacking. This West African climbing legume is absolutely packed with a chemical called 5-HTP. Once you ingest it, it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier and acts as the direct intermediate in human serotonin biosynthesis. It is literally handing your brain the exact raw materials it needs to naturally manufacture its own serotonin. This effectively regulates our mood and dials in our sleep cycles for much better daily recovery. Okay, shifting gears to section 3, endocrine optimization and drive. We're going to look at hormonal upregulation purely from an objective scientific standpoint here. But before we look at the next plant, we have to talk about the master switch, luteinizing hormone, or LH. It's produced up in your brain by the anterior pituitary gland, and then it travels down to the testes, where it triggers the actual cellular conversion of cholesterol into endogenous or naturally occurring testosterone. Simply put, if you can stimulate LH, you can stimulate testosterone. Which brings us to Fadogia agrestis, a specific West African shrub, and the animal models on this are staggering. They show this massive, dose-dependent increase in serum testosterone. At 18 milligrams per kilogram, testosterone doubled. At 100 milligrams, it increased 6-fold, 6 times the baseline. And what's really wild is that researchers objectively noted an 11 to 15% physical increase in testicular weight, which indicates active hypertrophy of those hormone-producing cells. That translates to a massive boost in physical drive.
Now, a lot of biohackers like to compare Fadogia agrestis to the famous Southeast Asian herb Tongkat Ali, but their mechanics are totally different. Tongkat Ali mostly works by inhibiting aromatase, which stops testosterone from converting into estrogen, and by lowering stress hormones. Fadogia, on the other hand, is a direct endocrine driver. It steps on the gas, forcing the pituitary to make more LH. And surprisingly, unlike a lot of natural aphrodisiacs, Fadogia has actually been shown to actively prolong ejaculatory latency, so it uniquely increases stamina right alongside that drive.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we zoom right down to the enzymatic cascade with Bulbine natalensis, which is a South African succulent. This plant directly upregulates specific enzymes like STAR and Ki450 SEC right inside the Leydig cells. It's essentially optimizing the factory floor where cholesterol gets converted into testosterone. It speeds up the entire assembly line for much faster hormone production. We'll round out this endocrine section with Mondia Whitei, an East African vine. Unlike those super aggressive, jitter-inducing pre-workout stimulants, Mondia acts as more of a generalized vitality tonic. The root actually has this sweet, ginger-like flavor, and what it does is facilitate nitric oxide pathways for much better blood flow, all while enhancing dopaminergic signaling in the brain. So it's this really smooth, natural boost to your overall vitality and drive. Moving right along to Section 4, Metabolic Resilience and Recovery. This is all about systemic stability and how your body handles physical stress and systemic inflammation. Meet Sutherlandia frutescens, commonly known as the cancer bush. It's this incredibly tough, desert-adapted plant with these distinctive balloon-like seed pods. On a cellular level, it acts as a brilliant metabolic adaptogen. It contains D-pannitol, which works as an insulin sensitizer to pull down fasting blood glucose. But at the same time, it actively downregulates the NF-κB transcription factor. In plain English, it tells your cells to stop pumping out pro-inflammatory cytokines, totally calming down that systemic inflammation. Next up is Harpicophytum procumbens, better known as devil's claw. This plant develops these really deep secondary tubers just to survive the brutal Kalahari savanna. Traditionally, healers would harvest these tubers to make tonics for treating severe fevers and digestion issues. Today, it has completely crossed over into the modern physical recovery toolkit. It's utilized all over the world as a highly potent anti-inflammatory. If you're trying to accelerate your recovery and protect your joints after intense physical exertion, this is exactly the mechanism you're looking for. Finally, we've reached our last and honestly most crucial section, the science and safety, and why we absolutely have to honor our physiology. With all this immense pharmacological potential comes the absolute necessity for strict scientific safety data. So the crucial point we need to make here is this. Just because a molecule is natural or just because it grew out of the dirt absolutely does not mean it's harmless. We have to look impartially at the reality of these powerful botanicals. Bulbine natalensis carries significant risks of liver toxicity. Fadogia agrestis, if taken at high continuous doses, has actually caused testicular toxicity. Mondia Whitei can exhibit duration-dependent neurotoxicity if you overuse it. And Sutherlandia frutescens can have severe interactions with modern prescription drugs, especially antidiabetics and immunosuppressants. I actually want to read this quote right out of the clinical source material regarding these hormonal botanicals because it's that important. Continuous high-dose administration can cause severe structural distortions, suggesting that long-term use requires strict cycling protocols. This perfectly underlines why the ancient wisdom of traditional healers, who, by the way, rarely use these plants every single day forever, has to be paired with modern scientifically structured cycling protocols if we're actually going to biohack safely. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. If ancient traditional medicine effectively mapped these incredibly complex physiological pathways over 1,000 years ago, deep in the deserts and rainforests of Africa, what other profound biochemical tools are out there just waiting to be responsibly rediscovered? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this sparked your curiosity to keep learning and keep exploring.